torch before they were hauled to jail.
Hey, it's on fire!
Somebody do it! Brutality!
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Hadlock. Anti-abortionists clashed with police outside a Houston clinic this morning. 22 people were arrested in the confrontation as the demonstrators tried to blockade the abortion center. The disturbance was part of a nationwide protest that's resulted in hundreds of arrests in many cities. Janet Chamblian has the story.
You don't want to come in here. They're doing abortions here. They're killing babies in here.
I escort you in. Don't worry. They're not going to do nothing to you.
It would not be an easy morning at the downtown Women's Center.
He just wants your money. You don't have to go with him.
Anti-abortionists 50 to 60 strong were here at dawn to blockade the building.
Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world.
Several protesters chained themselves to cement-filled barrels. Young children carried signs. The elderly chanted in anger.
Stop it now! Stop the killing! Stop killing those babies!
Who are these women to tell their babies to lay down and die just so that they can keep their jobs or otherwise be inconvenienced?
Police were ready for this. The demonstration here was happening simultaneously in cities coast to coast. The rally is patterned after those held by a group called Operation Rescue, known for violence and arrest.
You are hereby instructed to clear the driveway of barrels and persons. If you do not, you will be arrested for the obstruction.
When the threat failed, police fired up a blowtorch to separate the protesters from the barrels they used as anchors.
Hey, it's on fire!
Stretchers were brought out to carry those arrested away.
God bless you, brother.
They refused to move on their own.
I'm just tired of children being murdered. Sometime or other, people need to stand up and say, enough is enough. No more babies are going to be killed. Not today.
Clinic officials deny the protesters have been able to shut them down. They say they have 30 people scheduled for today, and by 10 in the morning, they'd seen a third of them. They say the people who don't show up today will either reschedule or go to another clinic. But some women would not be driven away, despite the jeers and chants.
Your baby loves you, sister. You don't have to do it. Your baby loves you.
Those taken into custody will be charged with a Class B misdemeanor. For most, it is a first arrest.
Praise God, praise God.
The subject of abortion is an emotional issue. The demonstrators say it takes a violent protest to fight a violent act. Janet Chamblian, 11 News.
Protest Right to Life advocates around the country demonstrated outside abortion clinics from coast to coast.
Here in Houston, the protesters were out in force early this morning, but by the time the demonstrations were over, many people were on their way to jail. Elma Barrera reports.
It was still dark in the early morning hours when they started gathering for what they called their rescue mission.
We're going to be peacefully assembled in prayer and song, and hopefully by putting our body.
They started peacefully and orderly, at times praying or singing or marching. But the peace and the calm got a little rough as the morning wore on and as people walked through the line.
Your money. You don't have to go with it.
The 4800 block of San Jacinto was blocked off by Houston police. The anti-abortionists greeted prospective clients with a warning. You don't want to come in here. They're doing abortions here. But the women, usually protected by 3 or 4 pro-choice people, barged through the line, many shielding their identities.
Get out of the way.
The arrest started early on when the protesters refused to move from the driveway. Houston police officers warned them of their rights, then would carry them one by one to police vans. 20 protesters were arrested by 10 a.m., but it took police close to 1 hour to find a way to free 2 men who had chained themselves to a drum half full of cement. It looks like both sides are getting what they want. The protesters are getting the publicity that they wanted, and the clinic is going forward with their scheduled abortions.
I'll stand back over here, please.
Houston police officers were using extreme caution in handling the protesters. When they used the torch, for example, they shielded the protesters with their jackets. And when the anti-abortion people screamed at them, they did not respond.
Are you responsible?
Passions boiled over on both sides, for abortion is an issue with seemingly no compromise. In the end, one must ask which God, whose God, is either side listening to.
I think that everybody has a right to have their own opinions about who God is and what God says.
This is Elma Barrera, Eyewitness News.
Pro-lifers protesting in front of a Houston abortion clinic. 150 men, women, and children gathered early this morning to close off both entrances to that particular clinic. Good evening, everyone. Houston police were ready and arrested 22 people who refused to clear driveways to the clinic.
Today's protest was part of a nationwide outcry by pro-lifers, and some of those arrested in Houston could not be carried off easily. Larry Otis reports tonight several locked themselves down to drive home their point.
A pregnant woman finds no easy path to the Houston Women's Clinic. Pro-lifers warn abortion is murder and make their point on the clinic driveway, locking themselves to barrels weighted with concrete.
Too many years I've said abortion's murder, and I didn't do anything about it. And there's come a time when I've just decided I'm going to do something about it.
Pro-choice clinic supporters scorn the lockdown.
Sick, and that's what I think. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, bad.
We will give you 5 minutes to clear the driveway.
And God has said, thou shalt not kill. We're all here as a matter of moral conscience.
Police explained the law individually to protesters blocking the driveway.
It's your choice at this time to either clear the driveway or be arrested. You have no more time.
Those not locked down are the first to go.
God bless you, brother. Holy, 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 merciful and kind.
As for their part, Houston police say they really didn't know what to expect, but made a commitment ahead of time not to overreact. A commitment they worked to keep.
A reinforced motorcycle lock around a protester's neck could not be clipped, so police pick up protester barrel and all. A torch melts the metal around an ankle, singeing a blind man.
Who did that?
Aside from that flare-up, police clear the way. Protesters seem to be satisfied.
Difficult for them to extract some of our people. We're buying precious time for the counselors. And of course, as you see, the street here is blocked off too by the police vehicles, and this is all contributing to our effort to keep the mothers and their children away from this abortuary.
The job is finished when police chip, hammer, and hack free the last protesters, all on their way to jail. One says there are no regrets about what happened outside.
This Halloween, following the shooting night outside police headquarters, a candlelight vigil for anti-abortionists arrested in those clashes earlier today. Their family and friends singing religious hymns as they express their support for those behind bars. A quiet show of solidarity, drastically different from the dramatic tactics that prompted police to arrest 22 protesters earlier today. Lloyd Geit reports.
Stop the killing! Stop killing those babies!
Dozens of anti-abortionists protested in front of this clinic near downtown where they say hundreds of babies are killed by doctors. Some staged a sit-in to block traffic, while others chained themselves to barrels filled with cement.
The American people are saying enough, enough. 5,000 babies a day, the carnage must stop. And we're seeing here a grassroots uprising of people all across the nation.
A number of women scheduled to get abortions pushed through the demonstrators to get inside. At least one scuffle broke out. The protesters shouted at the women not to murder their babies. Those who favor abortion were critical of the protesters.
If they are really that concerned about children, then they should be out there helping the unwanted children that are already here, more so than acting like fools out here.
When the demonstrators continued to harass the patients and block the driveway, police gave them a warning.
You're advised that you're obstructing a highway and/or passageway. We will give you 5 minutes to clear the driveway.
After the time was up, 25 officers moved in and began arresting people. It wasn't long before the police vehicles were full.
What's happening to me is insignificant compared to what's happening to all the children that are murdered in that clinic.
Is this worth it?
Absolutely.
This blind man had chained himself to one of the barrels, and police had to use a blowtorch to get him loose. When the man screamed he was being burned by the flames, the crowd accused the police of brutality.
Too much force! Too much force!
The director of this abortion center, who did not want to be interviewed, said this whole protest is ludicrous. She says those women who want abortions will either come back on Monday or go to another center. Near downtown, Lloyd Geit, Fox 26 News.
32